Today's podcast is sponsored by the Cooperators. As part of your local community, their advisors understand the challenges facing businesses like yours. They're here to help you protect what you've worked so hard to build and ease your mind with professional advice, the right insurance solutions, and a full range of coverage options. Visit cooperators.ca to find a local advisor today.
Welcome to Canada's podcast, the number one podcast for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs.
Hi, welcome to Canada's podcast. I'm your host, Celine Williams, and today I'm joined by Sahar Saidi, who is the founder and CEO of LUS Brands, a direct-to-consumer premium hair care brand for curly hair. You can see her beautiful curly hair here. Driven by motivation and a personal challenge, she decided to embark on a different path, one that will lead her to become the CEO of her own company. Sahar, nice to meet you and welcome.
Nice to meet you too, Celine. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'm really excited about this. First of all, I love curly hair brands, so I'm super excited to hear all about your journey of what made you decide to launch this brand and become a CEO.
Yeah, I see those waves and curls coming through, Celine.
It's much curlier when it's shorter. Now that it's long, it's just like,
the weight drags it down. But no, you have beautiful hair.
Well, thank you. So tell me a little bit about what made you decide to, did you start in consumer or packaged products, CPG? Is that what it's called? Was that your background at all?
Not at all. I have a very, very non-linear career path. Let's call it that. I went to school when I was 19, finished first year of my undergrad, and I obtained a door-to-door sales job over the summer and was making a lot of money, commission only. And I sat in school and thought, what do I need a degree for? I already, have a job that allows me to make money. So I told my parents I'm dropping out of school to knock on doors, and my immigrant parents were not having it. So really from the age of 18, 19, kind of been on my own, hustling, making money, and slowly worked my way up, that company's corporate chain. And I was VP of sales and marketing by the age of 25 at a health and wellness company. And I had somehow burnt out by the age of 25 and resigned from my position, moved to the Caribbean, lived in Turks and Caicos for a bit, lived in the US for a bit, worked in many different industries from retail, food and beverage, multimedia, entertainment, travel, tourism, aviation, and a lot. And then by the time I was kind of in my early 30s, I decided, let me go back to school, let me finish what I started. And I was tired of bouncing around, and I'd consulted and I'd proven that, you can make money without a degree, but I wanted stability and I wanted a normal corporate job. So got my MBA and thought, all right, great, let's go get a normal corporate job. And I couldn't land the job if my life depended on it. So starting LUS it was just something that it came out of necessity. And I thought, I'm seeing a huge opportunity here, and someone is going to make a lot of money in this space, and they're going to sell us more products that don't work and kind of take advantage. So I saw a problem in the consumer space with curly hair. I knew that, I could probably get out there and create products that work and take it to market and build a company, and then hopefully teach others how to do the same.
So I have so many questions from this. My first question is, so I want to ask this before I get into, LUS specifically, but you said that you couldn't land a job to save your life.
Yeah.
So, as someone who had an MBA and who had all this experience in different industries, what was the challenge there? Because I hear this a lot, and it's often the reason that people think to start a company or to go out on their own eventually. I'd love to just hear your perspective on that before we jump into.
Yeah, so my experience, especially with Canadian employers and large established organizations, they want to see a very linear career path. So they know where to fit you in their box. And, when you've changed industries, or in my case, changed countries, and, your title could have gone from VP of sales and marketing to head of business development, that feels like a step back when you're just looking at titles and roles and responsibilities. So I think, when I was applying for jobs at what I thought, with a double MBA at a director level and up, that I should be able to land and that I was confident I'd be good at, I was just getting rejection letter after rejection letter. My hunch is they didn't know where to fit me in. So That was kind of my experience is, if you want to move up in the banking industry, for example, and you started off as a teller and then you became a supervisor and a manager and a regional manager, you're going to work your way up. And that wasn't my experience. I've always, followed a different path and, again, did very well. I was successful, but it didn't show on paper. And unfortunately, it's a catch-22. If you can't land the interview, you can't really sell yourself. So that was my challenge.
I appreciate you sharing that because I think it's very insightful that and Canada specifically, it happens all over, but I think Canada is very traditional in this way where a lot of the larger organizations, they want to see that path. And I think it's really insightful to share that because I'm guessing we have a lot of listeners who are feeling that struggle as well, right? Who are educated, they're trying to change industry, they're trying to land something they want. And it's really easy to say there's something wrong with us. It's me, as opposed to say, actually, there's a systemic problem here.
Absolutely. And especially if you've had any element of self-employment on your resume. Unfortunately, most employers are going to look at that as a negative. They're going to say, oh, they were self-employed or they were consulting. So there's no proof. I don't see a well-known brand on this person's resume. I can't prove what they did and I don't understand it. And I think, that kind of worked against me where I'd done some consulting work. And again, if I had landed the interview, I'd have references from clients being able to show quantifiable results in my success. But you just see self-employed or consulting on someone's resume. And for some reason you think, oh, they just weren't working during that period of time. So I agree. I think there's a lot of people out there. And especially if you have an entrepreneurial nature to you, there's probably an element in your life or a time period in your life where you did some consulting work or some independent self-employment, projects. So I think it's unfortunate. And a lot of great talent goes unnoticed just because of that.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I think that there's a real opportunity. I'm seeing more organizations, I'm guessing your company is probably a little like this based on your experience, that are they're looking for entrepreneurial people to work inside. So that idea of an intrapreneur, right? Yes. Where having that experience is actually a benefit. Mm-hmm. It's not a detriment.
Yeah, absolutely. When I screen, resumes and candidates now, I actually look for that. And I think it takes guts for people to be able to, leave a stable job and a stable career and kind of venture out on their own and at least give it a go. And I mean, I've hired people that they tell me, they're like, look, I tried to start my own business. It didn't go well. And I really want to join a company like this so I can learn so that one day I can go back and start a company again. But at least I've seen it firsthand and I've learned. And I have a lot of respect for that. Not everyone that was self-employed was successful. So I think it's okay to admit, hey, I tried it. I failed this time around, but I'm going to start a company again one day. And for now, I just want to take on a job and learn.
And I think it's there's a lot to be said for someone who is self-aware enough and honest enough to say, this is not necessarily what I want to be doing for the rest of my life. And here's a future goal. And I think one of the best things that employers can do, and I love that you're doing this, is say, cool, come get that experience with me, because that's great for you. It's great for them. They're, when they're done, they're out in the world evangelizing you as a leader. And like, I don't understand the resistance that so many organizations have to that. It's like, It's like they think it's 1950 and someone's going to be there for 40 years, no matter what.
And you know what? There are people who want to get their foot in a company and have some stability over 10, 20 years. And that's great. We have roles for those individuals as well. I always wanted LUS to be a platform that catapults others' careers forward. And I think that's something that has always drawn me to at least, we're a small team right now, about 35 people. But I think everyone on my team has at some point in their interview indicated that, hey, one day I might want to start my own company. And I'm like, that's great. I would love to see a whole bunch of entrepreneurs come out of LUS and everyone starts their own empire. That's amazing.
Yeah. I love that. I love that you have that approach. I think it's really wonderful. And I think it's very refreshing to hear from a CEO that like, this is something that you value in people.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I want to talk a little bit about LUS and what made you decide to, I know you said that, that you saw a real opportunity to fill a gap in the market. So tell me a little bit about what your experience deciding to step into this and how it all happened. Because it feels like, as someone who has no background in consumer packaged goods at all, this is not that would feel very intimidating for me to suddenly be like, I want to create a product.
Right. Well, I think ignorance is bliss. And I think the fact that I didn't know everything that I know today about this industry and how much work would have been involved is probably what helped me kind of take those initial steps. Otherwise, now that I mean, this is now, we've just entered year 5 of the company. And as much as I know today, thank you, I don't think I would have taken that first step. So sometimes when you're really early on in your research and, you just really get into over researching something, you'll talk yourself out of any idea. So you almost have to just see the 2 steps in front of you and be able to take those 2 steps. And then once you reach that, be like, okay, what are the next 2 steps? Okay, I can do this, and just take it in bite-sized pieces and just do that. And that's what worked for me. But as far as why this space, I mean, my hair, this has product in it. And without product, my hair looks like this. So I'm a big poofy, frizz ball, and I grew up getting teased for my hair. I've been called every name in the book, Chia Pet, Sideshow Bob, you name it, I've heard it. I hated my hair growing up, straightened it, always had it up in a bun, braided it, try to hide it. But, I started buying hair products when I was 15, and I was 35 when I started LUS. So that's 20 years of going into specialty stores, salons, drugstores, you name it, to pick up products. And I still hadn't found something that worked. So all the products that worked were full of sulfates and silicones and harsh ingredients. So they worked, but I knew they were doing damage to my hair. And then the products that were organic or natural, they didn't work. I needed 4 or 5 different products to do this. And I was just fed up. The older you get, at least in my case, I was looking for simplification in my personal skincare and hair care routines. I thought, why hasn't anyone created a product that's an all-in-one product that does the job of these other 4 or 5 that I'm piling onto my hair? And that kind of, that one question of standing in a beauty supply store, reading the back of a new product label, I thought, okay, there's got to be a reason no one's done it. And I thought the main reason was they want to sell us more stuff. And let me just go out there and see if I can create it. So my company started with me Googling how to start a hair care brand. And I never looked back. Literally, that's what happened. So
that's phenomenal. I love that was the starting point, was a Google search.
Yeah, a Google search. How to start a hair care brand. And of course, that didn't help. So then you find experts in the industry, you shorten your learning curve, you pick up the phone, you call people, you learn. But yeah, I think it all just goes back to figuring out what the next 2 steps are and taking those 2 steps and then thinking, okay, what are the next 2 steps?
I think that's a really wonderful piece of advice for people to keep in mind, because we look at where LUS is now and where you are now, and people say, oh my gosh, I mean, I could never do that. How do you do that? And I think your point is really valid, that it's not like 5 years ago you went, great, here I am at the end point of where I'm going to be now. It was 2 steps to move forward incrementally.
Yep, that's all it was. And like I said, if I had tried to overthink it and overplan it, which is I think what a lot of entrepreneurs do, they want to figure everything out before they actually start, then you talk yourself out of it, because it is hard. And no matter what type of business you want to start, it's a lot of work. It's a lot to learn. It's a lot. So I think being able to be a little bit ignorant to what you're getting into is actually really helpful.
Yeah, I think that's a valid point. I am a person who can definitely over research things, because I will be like, well, let me know. You're not going to know everything. And I don't do it to predict. It's like a knowledge thing. But
right.
If you're over researching to try and predict every outcome, to try and plan for everything, you're never going to move forward.
Exactly.
So now that you're 5 years into LUS, looking back, what do you think that, what are some of the lessons, I guess is how I would say, that you learned that either worked really well for you or you would never do again?
I would probably never self-fund a company again.
Yeah.
It was really hard. And I mean, obviously 5 years in, I'm glad I did it this way. I learned everything because we didn't have money. I took less than $100,000 in startup capital, and most of that was from my own personal credit line. So I put myself in debt to start this company. And then I got a small loan from the BDC and Futurepreneur. So I hustled and I worked really hard and I worked around the clock because I didn't have a choice and I didn't have a safety net. I mean, I literally put myself in a lot of debt. So for me, I didn't, success was, it was the only option. It was either that or bankruptcy, but it's a lot of pressure. I think if I was going to do it again, and if fundraising or raising some sort of startup capital, that's not your own money, I would definitely recommend it just to alleviate the pressure and the stress at the beginning and to give you a little bit of funding to hire earlier. I mean, in the entire first year of our company, it was just me and two remote part-time contractors. One was helping me with customer service and the other one was helping with digital marketing, which means I did everything else myself, whether it was supply chain, logistics, operations, production, and working with our third-party contract manufacturers to content and social media. And it was a lot. So
That is a lot.
it is a lot. And I worked 12 to 18 hours a day, 6-7 days a week for the entire first year. So I think self-funding was great. And I don't think I had a choice. I mean, I tried to raise money and no one really believed that a shampoo company would be successful, let alone highly profitable and a fast growth company. So I didn't have a choice but to self-fund. But I think that if entrepreneurs do have a choice, especially earlier on when you're thinking about dilution and, do you want to give up a piece of your company early on? If you find the right investors and the right partners, I think it'll just alleviate a lot of the stress and pressure off of you early on.
Today's podcast is brought to you by the Cooperators. You can count on them to support you and your business with a full range of insurance coverage options. Their products provide the flexibility you want with the protection you expect. To find a Cooperators advisor near you, visit cooperators.ca.
That's really interesting because there's always challenges with getting funding or finding an investor, and you clearly faced some of them and funded yourself. And if you had an investor or someone to fund whatever you want to call it, there's challenges that come with that as well. So it's really interesting to hear your perspective on that, because there's no right or wrong. It's
Right.
just your experience is valuable for other people to hear and understand. And I think it's really interesting that it was challenging to find people interested in investing in a product like this, because I would think that this would be, given the gap in the market, would have been something very appealing to investors.
See, investors don't get that though. They think it's so niche. What people don't realize is that 60% of the people in the world have some sort of wave, curl, or kink to their hair.
Right.
They think curly hair is such a niche market. Are there enough customers out there that would buy your product? And, it's so competitive and it's so fragmented. And how are you going to market the products? And those are valid concerns and valid questions. But I mean, I had a full-fledged proper business plan, and I thought, my expensive MBA can at least come in handy for this one thing. I can write a business plan, but I still struggle being able to sell the vision. And sometimes it's okay, when people challenge you and ask questions, you just have to go out there and prove it on a smaller scale and then go out and raise funding. So eventually I did a seed round and I got into the Y Combinator program, in California, and went out there, lived in Mountain View for 3 months, went through the YCOM program. It was an incredible experience for me. And then when we completed the program, I raised $1 million from seed round ventures and angels. And those investors, I have a great investor group. And at the time, I didn't even need that money, but I took it to form an advisory board. So, it's about finding the right investors. And again, for me, it wasn't even about their money. It was connections, knowledge, just bring in smart, incredible people around me, because I knew the business was going to go through ups and downs. And I wanted people with different types of experiences and skill set. So I could call on them and say, hey, I'm facing this challenge in our operations. What do you think? Or I'm recruiting for this senior level executive. Do you mind having a look at their resume for me? And, I'm running a technical interview. I'm not a technical founder, but I've got someone on my advisory board now that I call them an advisory board. They're my investors, but really they're my advisors. And it's just been it's been good to have that support network for my investors, but they've been great investors, meaning they're not on me. I don't feel harassed or hassled. I don't feel pressure. That it's been a good relationship, and I think as an entrepreneur, that's that's probably one of the most important decisions you make is one, do you take money? And two, who do you take money from? Because I've talked to a lot of founders who have ended up selling their companies, and their main reason was to get their investors off their back. So you don't want to end up there.
Your story, well, yes, that I have also heard many of those stories, which is really unfortunate because you don't always know what you're getting yourself into. But I love that you have a team of investors, a group of like a super team.
My team of investors.
Your team of investors that is really like an advisory council. And I think that that's a really important thing to emphasize is if you think of and recognizing that you don't always have a lot of choice with investors. I appreciate that. But if you do, and you were in a position thinking of them as, would I want this person to be on my board of advisors, let's say, I think it's a really smart, question to ask yourself as you get into those conversations.
Yeah. I mean, the partners at YC will tell you, they're like, listen, no investor's ever going to build your company for you. Don't rely on investors to do anything for you or help you in any way. Look at it as just money. And, you need to go out and raise X dollars as quickly as possible so you can get back to operating your company. And while that's true, I 100% agree. We can't rely on investors to help. And you can't say, oh, I'm taking money from this, this venture and they help this company blow up, so they're probably going to help me. They're not. Like, you have to build your own company. But I think it's the individuals, especially at large funds. You're not dealing with the fund, you're dealing with your account manager and the individuals and the portfolio manager. So having a good relationship and being really upfront and honest with who you are and who you're not, and the fact that, I've never been, some founders like fundraising. I personally never enjoyed it. So I was really, really upfront when I was talking to investors saying, look, like, I'm not the kind to just go out and have dinner, meet coffee. I mean, I want to work, I want to build this company. And I want to turn your money into more money. And that's it. So I was very upfront with who I am as a founder and what they could expect from me and my own limitations. And I think being upfront and clear in your communication, your expectations with your investors is really important.
How much of that, like, deep knowing of yourself and ability to be that authentic and aware comes from working in different countries? Where do you think that comes from? Because I have thoughts on where that comes from, but I'd love to hear where you think that comes from, because I think a lot of times we're talking to, at least I end up talking to founders who are like 25 years old and just have a degree and they don't have that confidence.
Yes. Right. No, I think age does play a factor. I mean, like I said, I was in my 30s when I started LUS. I see a lot of very young, successful entrepreneurs, and I mean, my hat's off to them. I don't know where they get their confidence from, but I think, as you go on in life and you face failure and challenges and you have to get back up, and you almost realize it's never the end. It's never the end of the world. Like, I can actually start this venture and it's okay. And as long as I'm doing it my way and learning and enjoying the process, it's okay. Like, I don't have to prove myself to anybody. And having that level of confidence and being self-aware. I know for me, it took me a long time. It took me until my 30s. And I'm glad that I lived in different countries and was able to experience different industries and even different roles just to see what I liked. And I always say, I learned on other people's dimes. When I was an employee, or even when I was consulting for my clients, I was learning on the job. And I think that's really, really valuable. And that's something that I tell, my staff as well is just learn. Like, I am paying you to learn. You can make mistakes on my dime, because one day you're going to start your own company and I'd love to invest in your company. And I want you to have learned your mistakes here. So I'm grateful to all the people that, gave me an opportunity, gave me a job and allowed me to learn on their dime. I think that gave me confidence by the time I was ready to start my own venture.
I love that. I think that's a really important lesson for people. And I want to know what the biggest lesson you learned was in all of these experiences, or the few big. Listen, I'm one of those people that if you ask me the biggest lesson, I'll be like, I have 4. Let me tell you my 4. I can never come up with just one. So
there's so many. My team and I joke that I should write a book and call it like 101 Reasons Not to Start a Company. Because every day, it's a challenge, right? It's 2 steps forward, 5 back. And it's just this constant up and down. I I think one of the things I would have done differently is probably brought in more senior level help earlier on. Right now, I mean, again, it's year 5 and I'm recruiting simultaneously for a CFO, a CRO, a chief revenue officer, and a president GM. Because while my team is great, we are all, including me, learning on the job every single day. I mean, I've never been the CEO of a multi-million dollar consumer brand.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things that come with experience that you just can't replace. So we've done really well and the team's amazing, great culture. We work really hard, but you just get to a point where you're like, holy, this is bigger than all of us combined. And we really need people that have done this before. So I think I probably would have hired, and again, I think you can almost hire too senior too early, and that doesn't work either.
Agreed.
But, I think, and I mean, I talk about this and it's 4 years in, so it's probably, I'm not behind on this, but I think it would have helped, especially if you're a solo founder, just to have someone on your team that has more experience than you, just running a company overall, because you're learning. And regardless of how much prior experience you've had, unless you've sat in a CEO seat, it's a lot of responsibility. And I think it just helps to have someone else that has maybe been in that seat or a C-level seat and can help, take on some of the responsibility, because it's a lot.
I think it's really good advice to especially startup founders who are looking to build a business, not just be a solopreneur forever, or, run a really small agency, which is all valid. Those are all valid businesses. It's a wonderful thing to do.
Yeah.
And if you're looking at, it's often startups that are looking at building that larger organization. Ultimately, I think it's an important message for them to be aware of, because we have the fallacy that we can do it all ourselves. It's fine. I'll figure it out when the time is right. I love that you're like, yes, that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Been there. Yeah. I've worn every hat in this company.
Yeah.
And it's a lot. And it's again, being able to admit your own shortcomings and your own lack of experience and say, hey, I've been wearing this hat. I shouldn't be. I'm not the most qualified person to be sitting in this seat. And as your company, it gains its legs and it starts to become more and more of a real company, you really look at it and say, hey, would I hire myself for this role? Probably not. Let me go out and find someone to do these things that I'm currently doing for the company and doing good enough, but not excellent,
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I probably would have brought in more senior level support, just someone who's been in the industry, has the experience to support me in building the company, but never too late. We're starting now.
And I mean, good luck as you are on that job search. Truly, I wish you the best of luck, because finding the best candidates, the best fit for you, because every company is different. And I'm very conscientious of that. I think that is a wonderful and unique challenge.
Yeah, thank you. But it's exciting. You go from not having the funds to hire people. And like I said at the beginning, nobody would hire me. And now just seeing the profiles and resumes coming in from highly qualified candidates, it's rewarding just to have a chance to speak with these individuals. And I'm looking forward to building the team and growing and learning from my team as well.
I love that. I want to commend you for how open and clear you are on the importance of learning for yourself and for your organization. And for, I think a lot of companies don't like to talk about failure. They don't like to talk about, you have to fail to learn. Like if you're not failing, you're not learning and growing. And a real thread in what you've said is that concept of making mistakes and learning from them, and that is okay. And I really want to commend you for it, because I don't hear it often enough.
Thank you. And, you get to a point though where you're like, oh, I can't afford to make mistakes anymore. There's all these people that are relying on me to make the right decision. So it's a lot of responsibility. And that's how I really look at my role as CEO. And, as the company grows and I really start to think about what a true CEO would be doing on a day-to-day and what my expectations would be if I hired a CEO, and am I living up to those expectations, and really just taking full responsibility for every single person that we hire and add to the team. It's, these people are relying on this job and this company to continue to grow and succeed, because it's how they're paying their mortgages. It's how they're putting food on the table for their families. So we can't play around, and I have to make the right decisions. And as founder and CEO, it's your job to steer your ship and making sure that we're steering in the right direction. And, just always thinking about it in that light. It's a big responsibility and I definitely don't take it for granted.
Yeah, I love that. I'm going to ask this question. What does the future of LUS look like? Like, what are you thinking is the future of you and your organization? Because
you know what? It's funny because we're like I said in year 5 now, but I feel like we've barely scraped the surface.
I love that. That's great.
I have so many ideas and there's so much room left for growth, and it's exciting. And we're very lucky in that we have to think about which way should we grow and what's the best way to grow. And do we have the internal resources to pursue these new growth opportunities? So tons of growth, new products in the hair care vertical, related product verticals, geographic expansion. We've just set up our first 3PL fulfillment center in Europe. So
congratulations, that's phenomenal.
Yeah. So we're going to be shipping within the EU, from the EU now. So cutting down on shipping times and shipping costs. So this is kind of a test to say, can we go direct to consumer and copy what we did in North America around the world by setting up different 3PLs. So just still testing on, a small scale and saying, okay, great. If this works in Europe, we could do it in South America. Could we do it in the Middle East? Could we, do it in Australia? So it's exciting, and just see the team growing and I think staying true to your mission and your values. As the company gets bigger, we always go back to what are our core values and what are the team's values? What are the brand's values? What was the brand built on, to make sure that we don't steer away from that?
So I want to ask this question, which you talking about values, because I do a lot of work with organizations on culture and leadership development. That's what my business is about. So I talk about values a lot. So I am curious what Sahar, what your core values are, and then and if LUS's are different or if they're the same.
That's a good question. So my own personal values became the values that we incorporated into our employee handbook. And that is hustle, heart, and humility. So they're the 3 H's. And as a team collectively, when we sat around and said, what is it? When it was just 4 or 5 of us, and said, what is it about us that makes us us? It was everyone on the team has hustle. And that means, nobody thinks 9 to 5. People say, oh, I think outside the box, but here we don't have a box. It's just a kind of go-getter, get it done no matter what mentality. So it's that constant hustle. And then having heart, just, being authentic and being just genuine and caring about what you're doing and not doing things for the sake of meeting a KPI or a quota, but putting your heart into everything you do. And then humility is really simple. Just stay humble, and as we grow, it's constantly reminding ourselves and reminding each other, hey, we got to stay humble, and there's still a lot of room to grow, and just realizing anything could change. Look, COVID hit, so many companies were impacted. We were just lucky. We were, 100% DTC play consumer brand. We didn't have physical stores, but there are so many companies, and this pandemic has devastated so many different industries and companies, and it's sad, but you also have to stay humble that just because we weren't impacted this time around doesn't mean something else can't come and impact us. So never thinking that you've made it, never thinking you're ahead. So hustle, heart, humility. And then on the brand side, we've got our values listed on our website, but keeping things refreshingly real, like using real customers in our ads and not Photoshop models. We don't airbrush anything, like everything is as it is.
Amen.
It just is what it is, right? Keeping things as real as possible and being transparent and honest with our customers. Like, we communicate with our customers all the time and we keep it super, super real. We divulge information that a lot of consumer brands probably wouldn't let their customer base know, but we do. And it's paid off for us. I think, customers just came to trust us because they knew we weren't always going to tell them what they wanted to hear, but it was going to be the truth and it was going to be honest. So yeah, those are a few of our values.
I love that.
Yeah.
Before we wrap this up, I'm going to ask this question. You might have noticed that I have a few books on my shelf behind me. So I'm wondering if there is a book or a podcast or something that whatever, not everyone's a book nerd. Like mine would always be a book. I'm not saying yours has to be,
Yeah.
but that you would say this made a difference in my life somehow that you would recommend to our listeners or our viewers.
There are so many, but I started my career out in door-to-door commission-only sales. And back then our Bible was Og Mandino's Greatest Salesman in the World. And I still recommend, whether your career is in sales or not, I think everybody should read that book. It's a great little book. You can probably read it in a matter of hours, but no matter what you do in life, you're always selling. Mm-hmm. Whether as an entrepreneur, you're trying to sell investors on your idea and your vision, and or you're selling potential candidates to come and join you at your company, or you're selling your existing employees on the future of the company. I mean, sales has such a negative connotation as a word on its own, but we're always selling. And as entrepreneurs, we are selling more often than the average human being. So I think no matter what industry you're going into, just being able to hone in on sales psychology and just some basic in sales. And that's a great book.
I think it's a wonderful suggestion. Thank you for joining me today and for sharing. Me. Absolutely. It was a pleasure. We will have all the links to your website and social media, but for those listening, it's LUS Brands, LUS Brands.ca, or at LUS Brands on social media. You can check out all of Sahar's amazing products there. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to speaking with you again sometime.
Thank you, Celine. It was a pleasure.
Today's podcast was brought to you by the Cooperators Business Insurance. They're here to help make sure you and your business are protected today and into the future. Visit cooperators.ca to find a local advisor today.